everybody, it's Zero Gear Plus, and welcome to another sword demonstration. No one actually, gave me a comment for this one, but it's just something I kind of wanted to do a little impromptu. And you'll notice the second I raise my right hand, I am wearing a glove in my right hand. This is a dexterity glove. It's got little rubber micro beads in it, which allow me to keep good grip despite the fact that I'm wearing like a cloth glove. Why would I be doing that? Well, because I don't want to wear out the grip of my new sword. I got this in the mail just the other day. This is a Civil War era 1850 Union Cavalry Saber. This thing is beautiful, if I could draw it. The mouthpiece on the scabbard is a little tight, but with drawing it'll fix. This thing is, I love the saber. I don't know if I've ever gone on record on this channel to say, but the saber is just my favorite type of sword, just in design and how it looks and how it feels, and I love everything there is to love about the saber. Pardon me while I step off screen for a second. I love the saber. Saber is so I love how it feels, and it feels so good to finally have one. The Tizona del Cid, which was the last video I did, and it just happens to be sitting right over there, is the closest sword I have to a saber, and it's not a saber. This feels very different. I've been doing some form training for basically almost all today, and I can feel it in my forearm with all the twisting and the turning and the slight little, and it's just, you can just feel it up in your forearm, and you can just feel it tensing up, and it's just like, I expected this, but it's just that, it's that expected, like that workout burn, this feels good kind of feeling. But, now, I didn't just want to have like a little discussion on where the saber came from, because it's just European innovation. After the BC times, when swords were all straight and dual-sided, artisans and blade crafters really just decided to go out on a whim. It wasn't like ancient Japan where, they had the design of the katana since 1100 AD and just stuck with it for 900 years. They finally mastered it in the 1300s, luckily. Katanas made before 1913, or not 1913, oh my god, what's with the 19s? I don't know what's with the 19s. It's just, it feels so last generation, because it was. So it's like, you don't want to say 2000 or 20, whatever, because that's this generation. It's like, well, that's clearly not right. So anything older than that is last generation. So the katana was made in 1913. How's that feel? No, any katana made before the 1300s, before 13th century AD, is super, just like, look at it. It'll have the shape and design of a katana, but it's not, it's whatever. But Europe was constantly expanding with like metal type, blade thickness, length, width, fuller, no fuller, how big a fuller, if a fuller, blade curve, how much curve, little bit of curve, lot of curve. It's just, Europe was always just on top of it with, with steel production. And even going back to the BC times with how Vikings crafted their swords was just phenomenal, especially compared to like what was happening way into the late AD. The Vikings and the Celts and just all kind of like what we like to call what's that called? The Scandinavian whole peninsula right there, back in BC, dark times, was just on the ball when it comes to sword making. But what stemmed out of the European sword style of the saber, what's so captivating about it for me, I don't know. There's something just kind of marvelous and miraculous about it. Now, there's no real way to, there's no right way to wield a saber. There are different forms that you can be taught, but it's pretty cut and dry. Most people, because like I said, this was a Civil War era saber. If you were cavalry and you were handed this, it was just, here's a sword, use it. You weren't given like a class on here's how you use your sword. It's a cutting implement. You use it as it feels natural, and it feels natural coming from each different angle, like so. But I wanted to take this video not so much to talk about like how to use the sword, which I did with the Tizona del Cid being a side sword, which is, you know, a brand of sword fighting that not many people actually see or hear about anymore for that matter. But to talk about a couple like mistakes and like beginner things that people just don't seem to notice. Not so much mistakes, but like things that it's like, oh, I'm a swordsman because I have swords. But like if you're neglecting the basics, or even worse, don't know the basics, it's things that can cripple you down the road. And so like it all comes down to like, now you guys can't see my feet, but like footing is a big part of swordsmanship. I love to just go into like an example here, but you guys can't see. You know what? I don't care. We're going to show you my feet. Disgusting, nasty feet. Hang on. Now, camera's going to be a little crooked. I do not feel like fixing it at the moment. I'll grab it in a second. You'll notice I'm barefoot. Just bear with me. I'm in my own house, so what do I care? The standard I've always used, and like almost any swordsman school will tell you this, I don't know if it has a specific name or if it's called a specific thing. I just like to call it the 3-foot shuffle. Basically, it starts by putting your feet close together, like side by side, like you're standing like this. And then you're going to take your non-dominant foot. I'm right-handed, so my left leg is going to turn, my left foot rather, is going to turn 1, 2, 3.5 times. 3.5-foot shuffle. So this, now let me turn sideways so you guys can see. You're always going to want your dominant leg to be pointing straight out, like this, your dominant foot rather, and then just kind of like a 45-degree angle on this one for your foot, and this is good footing. This, and you want to always bend the knees a little bit, just a little bit. You don't want to be like down here, because then like your mobility is like ruined, but bend the knees a little bit. I'm in a nice sturdy position. If someone were to push me, I could take a good shove. Of course, I'd rather, you know, like sidestep so I don't have to get like pushed in the first place. But and another thing is advancing. You'll notice I'm just kind of shuffling forward. A lot of people, especially like if you've ever been rushed, I'm going to, you know, just kind of stick this back up here now so that everyone can see me, so we're not staring at my feet for the rest of the video. How's that sound? Does that sound great? I think that sounds great. Now it's just like, because this part is like easily explained. If you've ever had someone just charge at you, your first instinct is like, and just kind of like pitter backwards, and you're taking all these tiny little baby steps. And in swordsmanship, that's not so much a no-no, because it's a natural reaction, especially at first. But it's like, especially like if you were to cross your legs, that can trip you up, that'll knock you on your butt, and you don't want that, obviously, because bad footing, you fall over, you lose a match, your life, whatever. I'm still just swinging this thing around like I am so happy. Speaking of swinging, I do not want to have a coughing fit like the last episode, so pardon me. That may have seemed and sounded unprofessional, but I don't care. Speaking of swinging, overswinging, another big problem. If I were to just chop like you see in the movies and just swing right across, look at where I am now. I have to make all this ground. I just have to make all this up to be able to recover. But naturally, my opponent is just going to see me here, and they're going to go, target. So while I'm trying to recover to get back to them, by the time I get to about here, I'm going down. So you never want to overswing. Like really, about this far out or this far out, you don't really want to go too far past, you know, the width of your opponent. And that's why like thrusting is such a common practice. Especially, wow, I can just segue into a segue into a segue. The saber, this is actually something I wanted to talk about specifically in this video, because I kind of like, this saber is not a good example of it because it doesn't have a lot of curve. But what I like about sabers is, if you were to thrust with a saber, normally it doesn't seem like it'd be such a great idea. I mean, it's not a straight blade, and so you're going to have difficulty, you know, sticking it into a target. But you could actually thrust incredibly well with a saber with very little, you know, taken away. But if you were to say, like if your opponent were to parry your saber thrust, if you were to get parried, let's say this way, Like your blade was just ding, parried that way. There's a bit of a curve on this, so it's like if you were to get parried, you could tilt your blade in this way and continue into your opponent. Parried that way, tilt blade, continue in. And that's just, I really like that. It's more noticeable on things like Indian swords, like Indian scimitars and Middle Eastern swords where there's a much larger curve. But there's a slight curve on this, and I figured it's just a great thing necessary to kind of bring up. Speaking of the curve, the back end of almost all sabers, I believe, if not every single one, all of this on the back side of the blade, I don't know if you guys can see this, is edged. Not on this blade because it's a reenactment blade, not that you guys can see that, but this much of the back side of the blade actually has an edge. So that's just more to the fact of, you know, parrying in, turning into a parry, you know, to be able to thrust and cut if you can't properly, you know, get a good lunge and a stab from it. But yeah, I don't want this video to run on for too long. I'm starting to get the coughing fits again, so before I actually start, you know, again, I'm going to end this video. I love the saber so much. It's my favorite type of sword of all time, and I wish it could beat a rapier in a duel, but the rapier is like the ultimate dueling sword. I'm not saying it's the best type of sword. I mean, like, because it's like, this is my favorite, and I'm not even saying the rapier is like the best type of sword, but it's just, it's a good dueling sword. It's made for, you can do so much with so little energy, and they have so much range, and it's nuts. So this has been the kind of like saber dirty laundry video, I guess I'm gonna call this. And actually this turned out pretty well, but that's more behind the scenes stuff, so I don't want to talk about that. So I'm gonna end the video, you know, while I'm still this personality that's here talking to you people instead of talking to myself in the post commentary. So this is Eargear Plus signing off with his newfound favorite sword, and I will see you guys later.